Welcome. Tonight we'll be in Proverbs Chapter 5. Let's go directly to God's Word. Verse 1 says, "My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Listen closely to my understanding, so that you may maintain discretion and your lips safeguard knowledge." All right, so here we have King Solomon sending another warning or another admonition to his son to pay close attention, to listen to wisdom. So listen to the instruction that he is given. And remember, when we're talking about wisdom, we're not just talking about information, but we're talking about the proper application of information. That actually is what wisdom is, the application of the information. So pay attention and then apply the information that I'm giving you. He says, listen closely to my understanding. So here's the reason why. So that you may maintain discretion and your lips safeguard knowledge. So what it's saying here, when it says maintain discretion and your lips safeguard knowledge, is pointing to the fact that though you may have been given information or wisdom or knowledge or understanding, you have to maintain it. You must continually keep your mind on these things because you can still not apply the information that you've been given. So there's a responsibility to take this information and to maintain it or be watchful so you don't disobey the information that you've been given, because this is godly wisdom through the mouth of Solomon to his son. He says, so that you maintain discretion and your lips safeguard knowledge. Now he shows verse 3, where he picks up on the idea of the lips, and he says, the lips of the forbidden woman drip honey, and her words are smoother than oil. Now, when they're talking about the lips of a forbidden woman, what it's talking about here is not the kisses of a forbidden woman, but the flattery, things that are coming out of her mouth. He says, the lips of a forbidden woman drip as honey, and her words are smoother than oil. In the end, she's as bitter as wormwood and sharp as a double-edged sword. So it's talking about, again, the flattery that can come from this forbidden woman. And because King Solomon was talking to his son, this is why he's giving the example of a woman. So this information also could be taken in reverse. If this is a flattering man to a woman. But again, this is King Solomon speaking to his son specifically. So he's going to use a woman that's using her words to entice him. He says her words are smoother than oil. But here's the end of this. In the end, she's as bitter as wormwood, and that's a very bitter taste of wormwood, and as sharp as a double-edged sword. It'll cut you both ways. Her feet go down to death. Her steps head straight for Sheol, or the grave. She doesn't consider the path of life. She doesn't know that her ways are unstable. So he's showing the dangers of listening to a woman that's going to be flattering with her lips. And this has a sexual connotation in it as well, because it's not just flattering, just saying nice things, but it's going to lead to sexual activity outside the bonds of marriage. And he's warning against this. Verse 6 says, she doesn't consider the path of life. She doesn't know that her ways are unstable. So the result of all this flattery is going to lead to death as opposed to lead to life. So in response to this, Solomon again says in verse 7, so now, sons, listen to me and don't turn away from the words of my mouth. Now, verse 7 picks up on what we saw verse 1 that said, my son, pay attention to my wisdom, listen closely. And verse 2 says that you may maintain discretion. So this is saying that the same thing or the same concept another way, where it says, don't turn away from my words. Listen to me. So we have a responsibility of, when you hear truth, is to keep it, because you can hear truth and know it right now, but then 5 years down the road, don't apply it. So it's like you didn't even know it. So verse 8, his wisdom to his sons is what? Keep your way far from her. Don't go near the door of her house. So one of the words of wisdom we find here is the idea of not even going there. It's a lot easier to stop something before you even begin it. So a wise man foresees evil and hides himself or turns the other way. He says, keep far from her. So that deals with proximity. Don't go near the door. Don't put yourself in bad situations. Then try to be a super saint. You know, it's saying the wise man knows I won't even go to the house. He says, don't go near the door of her house. And here's what happened if you do, if you don't listen to these words of wisdom. It says, otherwise you will give up your vitality to others and your years to someone cruel. Strangers will drain your resources, and your hard-earned pay will end up in a foreigner's house. At the end of life, you will lament when your physical body has been consumed, and you will say, how I hated discipline, and how my heart despised correction. I didn't obey my teachers or listen closely to my instructors. I am on the verge of complete ruin before the entire community. So, in summary, all that was just said right there is the consequences of entering into a sexual relationship outside the bonds of marriage, which would be adultery or fornication. And he talks about strangers in verse 10. Strangers will drain your resources. Your hard earned pay will end up in a foreigner's house. And he just lists a lot of the consequences of these activities. At the end of your life, you'll lament when your physical body has been consumed. Now, all this could point to a lot of things. It could be some kind of disease that was picked up. Also, it could be death because your physical body has been consumed. Because one of the things during this time that was going on in the culture is the punishment for committing adultery could be punishable by death. And you can find this in the book of Deuteronomy. Also, it says your strangers will drain your resources. Your hard-earned pay will end up in a foreigner's house. Now, this could be think of today. If we try to make a today application, we can see that that's like now you're having to pay child support or you're paying alimony. But what all these different things he's pointing is just saying that at the end of your life, you're going to realize the mistakes and how it was not worth getting involved with a foreign woman, meaning a woman that's not your wife or the person you're not in covenant with, the consequences of this. And then you'll regret it and say, how I hated discipline, how my heart despised correction. So he's begging his sons, listen, don't even go down this path. It's a lot easier, as I said before, to not even go down that path than to find yourself in that situation and try to come out of it. Verse 13 says, I didn't obey my teachers or listen closely to my instructors. I am on the verge of complete ruin before the entire community. Now, we just went through a tough section right there of warning the son what not to do. Now, here's what you should do. Verse 15 says, drink water from your own cistern, water flowing from your own well. Should your springs flow in the streets, streams in the public squares? They should be for you alone and not for you to share with strangers. Let your fountain be blessed and take pleasure in the wife of your youth. Where it says, drink water from your cistern. This is a reference to a husband being satisfied with his own wife. That's where it's talking about your own cistern, water flowing from your own well. Verse 17 says, they should be for you alone, and not for you to share with others, because the wife is betrothed to the husband and they are one flesh. It's not something you share with every other person. And this is where you're supposed to find your fulfillment. Verse 18 says, let your fountain be blessed and take pleasure in the wife of your youth, a loving deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast always satisfy you. Be lost in her love forever. Verse 19 lets us know what verse 18 is talking about. When it says, take pleasure in the wife of your youth, it's talking about not only just enjoying her company, but also being sexually fulfilled through your wife, not a stranger. Also, verse 20 says, why, my son, should you lose yourself with a forbidden woman? So we have what you should do in verses 18 and 19. Now we're seeing the parallelism used in verse 20, showing what you should not do. He says, why, my son, would you lose yourself with a forbidden woman or embrace a wayward woman? For a man's ways are before the Lord's eyes, and he considers all his paths. So he's asking a question. It's a rhetorical question. My son, why would you lose yourself with a forbidden woman? So there's a consequences that we just spoke of in the scriptures I read earlier. It says, why would you lose yourself to a forbidden woman or embrace a wayward woman? And this is what he's showing you. Like, it's foolish to do this because why? Verse 21 says, for a man's ways are before the Lord's eyes, and he considers all his path. This verse 21 is giving us the reason that you should not be with the forbidden woman, because the Lord sees everything you do. So it's not about, well, I can get away with it or no one else sees what I'm doing. No, but God sees everything that we do. For man's ways are before the Lord's eyes, and he considers all his paths. And his paths refer to the way you live or the way we walk, the way we carry ourselves, what we do with our lives. The Lord sees all. And this picks up on the idea that we should have fear for the Lord. And his fear is a reverential awe that leads to our obedience. When we realize that whatever we do, whether people see it or not, God sees everything we do. So in response, it'll keep us away from the forbidden woman. Why? Because God sees everything we do. Verse 22 says, a wicked man's iniquities will trap him. He will become entangled in the ropes of his own sin. He will die because there is no discipline and be lost because of his great stupidity. So this is picking up once again of what we were already saying in the previous verses about there's consequences to sin. And he says that the man's iniquities or his sins will trap him. He will become entangled in the ropes of his own sin. And ropes entangling somebody are hard to get out of. So there's consequences for sin. And some of them you may not be able to get out of. Because he says in verse 23, he will die because there is no discipline and be lost because of his great stupidity. So it's actually foolish and stupid to go against what God is saying. But God is using King Solomon to warn his sons of the danger of sexual immorality. But he's also saying, here's what you should do. Be satisfied in the wife of your youth. So there's a way out. He's not identifying or he's not denying the need for companionship or the need for sexual pleasure. He's just saying those things should be filled from your wife. Drink from those cisterns, not from a forbidden woman. So chapter 5 is some more practical information that God has given through the mouth of Solomon to his son. So it's the warning of sexual immorality and the consequences that come from not having discipline. But he's also showing you the way you should exercise a relationship with a woman or your wife, the way you should exercise it. You should be fulfilled through her physically, sexually, all these different ways, and not find fulfillment outside the bonds of marriage. He's given very strong warnings and saying these are the consequences that can happen if you disobey my words, and you'll regret it in the end. And as I said before, as the New Testament lets us know, the wages of sin is death. But the good news is if we follow these things, our life will go better because you're avoiding a lot of these paths and different ways that's going to lead to all types of problems, clearly listed here in Proverbs chapter 5. I pray this word was a blessing to you, and let's apply the things we've learned today.